morning, everyone, and welcome to the Private Officer Beat Radio on this, the 14th day of October 2024. We're in the middle of fall. I'm Rick McCann behind the microphone, and this is definitely my favorite time of year, always has been. I am a seasonal guy. I love the four seasons. And definitely spring and fall are my favorites, although all of them really are. I love winter and spring and summer. That sounds kind of like a song. But today we've got a lot of serious business to take care of. And I want to say here in the intro of the program that we're still dealing with the hurricanes in Florida as well as in North Carolina. I had a couple of inquiries over the weekend, so I'll go ahead and answer those questions. And anyone else who might be interested in knowing what's happening in the private security end of the deal or in the states, Florida, especially the metropolitan Tampa area, was devastated, many areas destroyed, a lot of property damage, millions of people still without power throughout the state of Florida. They are still going house to house as they are in North Carolina, searching for victims. And unfortunately, in the North Carolina, Georgia and the North Carolina and South Carolina area, we now know that over 250 are dead and many in the hundreds are injured, and hundreds more are still missing. And our corporate office is still in Charlotte, North Carolina, so we're not too far from the mountain region. And that's someplace that I often go to, especially this time of year, because I love apple cider. I love apples, and we get to pick them fresh at various farms. And unfortunately, they won't have much of a business this year. But so many people are missing and presumed to be dead in some areas. We don't know what that number will shake out to be. We do know that now 4 security officers have died. 4 security officers have died. 2 from drowning, 1 of a heart attack, and 1 we don't know yet. The body was just recovered. This is in North Carolina. In Florida, where Hurricane Milton really, at a Category 3, just took control of much of that state and devastated it, killing a number of folks, injuring many, and like I said a moment ago, millions still without power. Governor DeSantis is on top of it, and I've been listening to his daily updates, and sometimes several times a day, and it seems like that state will recover much quicker than North Carolina. And I don't want to get into a bunch of politics. I don't do that. But obviously, the way that the 2 governors from the 2 different states operated speaks volumes as to why one state will recover faster and get the help that they need, while many are still off the grid. I just saw a video over the weekend that showed a woman, an elderly woman, who was without power, had just had surgery, had no water because they had a sump pump for a well, had no food, and no one to help because she lived all alone. And Dr. Phil and the group that he was with just happened to be driving through that mountainous area with the roads closed, just trying to see if they can help people, and they had a destination to go to deliver some food. This woman came out in front of their vehicle and said, "Please stop and help me. Please, no one has come here." And I don't have any phone, I don't have any food, I don't have any power, no lights, no water. And Dr. Phil's team had a generator and hooked her up. They had a Starlink, which is a phone communication through Elon Musk that connects to satellite. It's a satellite phone. And they gave her one of those. They had medics with them, and they were able to check the woman out to make sure that she was healthy and no medical issues. And they gave her food. And I just saw a video this morning where the woman was talking to Dr. Phil later on through satellite. So it was good. But recovery in North Carolina will come much slower than in Florida. In Florida, they're used to it. They get a lot of hurricanes, and North Carolina doesn't get very many hurricanes. They do get tornadoes, but Florida will recover. A friend of mine lives in Tampa, in Hillsborough County, and his house had quite a bit of damage. He and his wife evacuated ahead of the hurricane. My sister lives in that same area, a little further south, and a very good friend of mine lives in that same area, a little bit further south, and all of them had damage. All of them had no power. All of them had various degrees of destruction and things happening. But they will all recover, thankfully. I tell you this because, believe it or not, the hurricane season is not over. It's still got a few weeks. Hurricane season is November 1, officially. But we've had hurricanes deep into November. Might have been one in December. I'd have to check the record. Many security officers have been involved in working during the hurricanes, both in Florida and in North Carolina. Unfortunately, they're not getting any recognition, and few news outlets have even mentioned private security as one of the assets that has moved into the area. Now, prior to Hurricane Milton hitting Florida, and prior to the hurricane in North Carolina, I began asking about all of these companies, which I know will flood the area unlicensed, all of these security officers. We talked about this last week. And I began asking the officials, what are they going to do? How can they, make sure that people are properly licensed? And the bottom line is they can't. They will do after investigations, after everything is cleaned up, after things get back to normal. These regulatory agencies will be able to do some investigation if they get complaints. But I was involved in a situation a number of years ago in North Carolina here, and it was a similar situation where they had tornadoes and floods, and a number of security companies moved in from out of state, and some individuals, not even licensed, represented themselves as security companies and being licensed, and they were not. And they caused a lot of problem. They were armed, and they weren't supposed to be. They were deceitful. They defrauded several businesses, so on and so forth. In fact, in this one situation that I'm talking about that I was involved in, the alleged company, which was not licensed, and the individuals took money, and then within a couple of days they disappeared and abandoned ship. And that's why it's such a problem. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector. I'm Rick McCann in front of the microphone once again. This is the Private Officer Beat Radio, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC.
Can we be real for a minute? I'm a high school math teacher, and I'm a firefighter.
Man, we're going to have you out in just a minute, okay?
I'm a designer.
I'm a retired VP in business.
And I'm a student.
I'm a mother.
I'm a business analyst, and I'm a volunteer firefighter.
You thought we just fought fire?
Firefighters get trained to do so many things.
Right here. Good job.
What we do is serious business.
Three-quarters of the nation's first responders are volunteers. That includes here in Connecticut. And lately, it's been harder than ever, with fewer citizens volunteering.
From teenage cadets like me
To seasoned veterans like me.
So what are you waiting for?
You ready to make a difference?
Ready to join our team?
Your community needs you. We need you. Visit everydayheroct.org or stop by your local firehouse today and take the first step of joining your fire department.
Cracking down on seatbelt violations. Buckle up day and night or expect a ticket. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live, they'll be on the lookout. Cops write tickets to save lives. Click it for ticket.
Welcome back to the Private Officer Beat Radio. I am Rick McCann, once again behind the microphone, and a few weeks ago, maybe a month, I talked about that we have produced and broadcasted more than 1,000 radio shows. We now have 4 different radio shows, 3 of which are produced every week, 3 times a week. And the Private Officer Beat Radio has been on for close to 20 years, almost since the inception of Private Officer International, and more and more we are seeing actual radio stations, and in some areas even TV stations, that are going out of business. We're seeing people who put up podcasts and you follow it for a little bit and all of a sudden it's gone. I had a couple of friends who did that very thing. I think they lasted about maybe 5 or 6 months. Another, I'll call him character, who tried to compete with Private Officer International, also set up a website similar to POI. And in fact, many of his pages were almost replicas, duplicates of our websites. They had a podcast, and within about a year and a half or less, they also disappeared. When you produce over 1,000 of anything, now I'll give you an example. Think about your favorite TV series program that comes on every year. I was just talking to a friend of mine over the weekend about Matlock. I mentioned that on the radio show last time. There's a new Matlock show. Well, the old show would have upwards of 30 episodes or more per season, and that's the way it was with many TV shows produced back in the 70s and early 80s. Now, the average number of episodes per, the season is 8 to 10, and occasionally you might get a show that has 12. When you start thinking about, okay, they have 2 seasons, or maybe just 1 season, they're producing 12 or 24 shows per year. That's it. Many radio shows, especially talk radio, are 5 days a week. And they normally do it about 9 to 10 months out of the year. So that's a lot of radio shows for them as well. We have produced over 1,000. And I'm bringing this up because it was part of a conversation about a week or 2 ago, how we have been able to maintain while others do podcasts. And I clarified right away, we're not a podcast. We're an actual radio show. We're broadcasting live with sponsors, with commercials, with PSAs, with topics, not only the news, but many other things during each radio show. During the conversation, it was kind of cool. I was very appreciative when they was kind of congratulating me on and POI over 1,000 radio shows, but more than that, just the sustainability, being able to sustain our association, our radio shows, the Officer Down newsletters, the being able to keep track of the officers injured and killed. Of course, a little of that has gone by the wayside, unfortunately, because we've had to reduce staffing, and we don't put as many hours into this whole process with the newsletters and collecting information as we used to, which was well over 100 hours a week. Now we're doing something like about 60, I believe. But we're still trying to get as much information out there and keep track of the officer downs. And we'll tell you about the security officers murdered just in the last 10 days after the next break. I do want to mention, however, that Private Officer International is not going no place. We've seen our membership drop. I'm very upfront. I'm not going to, make things appear to be more than they are. But we're still a very professional organization that's sought after by many, many reporters and news organizations, magazines. We're also sought after by schools trying to get information about the profession and how things have changed, and a lot of that's done behind the scenes, and we don't make any money, of course, on any of that. The bottom line is Private Officer International may have reduced, we did reduce quite a bit of our services, especially in the news department, but we're still doing everything that we've always done since day one, and we're going to be around until I'm not around anymore. We may have to do some more cutting, some more things may have to be done less because of budget constraints and staffing and so forth. But that's why it's very important to support Private Officer International. We're the only organization out there. You can think of ASIS, but they don't do what we do. We're the only organization out there that is collecting data, that is helping in the training area, especially for frontline security personnel and private police. We're the only ones who work with state and federal agencies to make sure that the officers killed in the line of duty, those numbers get collected and reported accurately. It's very important that happens. And there's so many other things that we do behind the scenes, and the membership benefits that we offer that, unfortunately, other groups tried but failed and went out of business. Support us. We really need your support. Join up if you haven't already become a member for $99 lifetime membership right now. Go to privateofficer.org. As I've said numerous times in the recent year, many people balk and complain and moan and groan because we started charging $50 for a newsletter annually. That comes down to about, I think, 13 cents a day. And most people can afford that realistically. And if you can't, contact Help Desk at privateofficer.com. We'll give you a free year of the newsletter. I really need for each of you to tell others in the profession, and they don't have to be in uniform security. They can be in loss prevention, bail enforcement, bail bonds, you name it. We have members in all those categories. Even in the towing service, has become members. We're going to take another quick break. I want to come back. I want to talk about the number of security officers that have been murdered recently, and I want to talk about the Jack Hayes International organization that we work together on statistics, and I want to tell you this week how things have really changed for the security industry. I'm going to tell you the 6 high-risk security clients now. Things, this list often has many of the same types of clients on the list, but every year it changes based on the number of security personnel that are injured, killed, assaulted, so forth. And working with the Hayes Group, we're able to put some of those retail numbers together as well. You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector, the Private Officer Beat Radio, and I'll be right back.
I met Luke when I was pretty much born. We kind of just grew up together. He got his license when he was 16. We were going to the beach, and Luke was driving. I was in the passenger seat, and all of a sudden, I don't remember anything. I wasn't conscious for it. We got hit by a drunk driver. I feel like I knew right away that it was never going to be the same. I don't know. The doctors, they were telling me I was so lucky to be alive. When I found out that he died on impact, I didn't really feel lucky. And sometimes I still don't. Drinking and driving is completely unnecessary, and I think it's selfish if you do it. It's not worth taking that risk, because you never know what's going to happen.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector, right here on the Private Officer Radio Network. Now don't go away, because we are coming right back when we've got a whole lot more right here on the Private Officer Beat Radio. Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the SLED training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 704-806-4933. If you're not familiar with the Jack Hayes International Group, they are in Wesley Chapel, that's in Florida, in that same area where the hurricane hit. And they are a great group. What they do is they put together statistical data for the loss prevention industry, including organized retail crime. They also work on safety programs for the security industry and for retailers. And we have, over the years, collaborated and, the information that we gather, the statistics and the statistics they gather from many areas come from the same resources. If you're not familiar with them, go to hayesinternational.com, Hayes international.com today, and you will find them quite the resource. Before I get into how things have shifted for the most dangerous clients out there, I want to talk a little bit about the news, but also about the security officers who have been killed in the line of duty. In Taylor, Michigan, a security officer, a female security officer, was found murdered. This happened on October the 9th, just a few days ago. Now, late yesterday, we found out that she was actually killed, police believe, by her boyfriend. The security officer was on duty. The security officer was armed. But from the new information that we received, police now believe that it was her either current or ex-boyfriend who fatally shot her. And the information that we just received that an arrest was made, but it didn't really go into a lot of detail. And I'm actually working on a radio program or maybe even a training talking about what to leave behind. And a lot of times security officers are killed by each other or by relatives or someone that they have known from their past. And so it's unfortunate that violence, not necessarily from the location, but from the people, follows you, and you can be killed or assaulted or shot or, anything that you could think of that can be done to you on the street can be done to you on the job. And that's why it's important, very important actually, that if you do have a problem with people, that you leave that behind, because it will follow you. And I've mentioned this before about women being killed on the job site or being killed at church, because that's someplace that people know where you are. They might not know where you live, but they definitely know where you work or where you go to church. Another security officer was murdered. This one was in Jacksonville, Florida. It was at an adult arcade, which is really a casino type thing. It's illegal in most areas, but the security officer was murdered, shot several times, and unfortunately, as far as we know, there's been no arrest made. A security officer in New York City was gunned down just yesterday. Police said that this happened, I believe they said, on Long Island. Police said it was a confrontation while he was on duty, and is still under investigation. A California security officer was also murdered in the last 2 weeks. This happened in Montebello, California, at a legal marijuana dispensary. Police said the dispensary was supposed to close around 11 p.m., but they were advertising they were a 24-hour operation, and several men came in to rob them and killed the security officer, unfortunately. A security officer in Texas killed another security officer. This happened in Houston, where two security officers were working. They got into a confrontation, and unfortunately, one killed the other. A Michigan security officer was also murdered within the last several weeks at a library. And again, this turned out to be, after an investigation, someone that he knew, and the man came to his workplace to intentionally kill him. And that's, like I said, it's very easy for people to find out where you work. In other news, in Nashville, Tennessee, the Sheriff's Department has suspended 4 deputies for wearing a police patch on their uniform while they were working off-duty security against policy. The Davidson County Sheriff's Department said that 4 deputies were working at a nightclub. Alexander Robles, Marshall Grewell, David Farmby, and Liaison Bonds, all suspended for 40 hours because it's against policy to wear any police paraphernalia while they are working off-duty. An Atlanta security officer got into a confrontation with an Atlanta council member at a cemetery. It seems like the Atlanta City Council person had permission to be at the cemetery past sundown for a surprise wedding engagement. Who gets engaged at a cemetery? I don't know, but evidently someone did. The security officer heard noises after dark, went to investigate. The people involved included this council member. The council member said they had permission but didn't have it in writing. The security officer had no way to verify it and told everyone to pack up and get out. And that's when that female council member pushed the security officer. He pushed back. Unfortunately, the security officer was fired, according to the information that we have. Police were called, but no arrests were made that's not to say that there won't be. In Franklin, New Hampshire, a section of a highway has been named or renamed after a security officer who was killed at a New Hampshire hospital. The dedication occurred this past Thursday, honoring Bradley Haas, who was also a former Franklin police chief. According to the news that we reported on back in November of last year, a gunman opened fire inside the hospital, and that's when the security officer was struck and killed in a heroic manner. Security officers that work at a men's homeless shelter has voted to unionize because of low pay and little training. This includes special police officers from the District of Columbia, but I don't think that the D.C. Metropolitan Special Police are allowed to formally unite, but as security officers they may be able to. In Santa Monica, California, a security guard's been arrested after getting involved with a dispute at a homeless shelter. Security officer is charged with attempted murder after that dispute turned violent, where the security officer pulled a weapon and injured one of those people that was involved. More than 110 shots were fired. I almost hesitated because it's just outrageous. Were fired at apartment security officers in Memphis, Tennessee. 3 men have been arrested after they shot at security at the Binghamton apartment complex. Security officers were checking out a suspicious gold Buick SUV when these 3 people pulled out guns and began firing. The security officers were not injured. Matthew White, Johnny Rejas, and Thomas Mayo, all charged with aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during a dangerous felony, possession of marijuana, and charges could be escalated to attempted murder, according to the DA. In Palmdale, California, a Chase Bank security guard has been charged with, planning a $200,000 armed heist. According to police, a couple arrived at the bank early February. They said they were there to withdraw $200,000. The security officer standing nearby was part of this whole scheme and setup. Now he has been arrested. 24-year-old Tanjay Graves of Palmdale and Lancaster residents Jerry Papa Wembley, 21, and Roman Saeed Isaiah Smith, 24, all charged with grand jury indictments. They've all been incarcerated, and including the security officer. A Texas church security team member has been arrested for faking a shooting. In Burnett County, Texas, police responded to a church last Sunday during church service. A church security team member said that he had fired several rounds after several men in masks and AR-15 type rifles surrounded the backside of the church. Now police say that Jacob Wayne Tarver, 45, admitted it never happened. He's been arrested and, of course, released from the church security team. In Pensacola, Florida, a man pulled a gun on a motel security officer, and unfortunately, he was the wrong person to do that to. Gabriel Roberto, 42, has been charged with aggravated assault with a weapon after the security officer responded by punching this man's lights out, literally hitting him in the face several times. The man fell to the ground. The security officer grabbed his gun, and then the security officer beat him a few more times. Police arrived and, just in time, rescued the suspect, took him to the hospital, and he's been arrested. In Overland, Missouri, 3 men have been sentenced to prison after an armored truck robbery. Philip Keith Smith, 65, was sentenced to 11 years. David Greenwade, 62, and Herman Leon Woods, 31, sentenced to 20 years and 3.5 years in prison, respectively, for an additional count that they faced of having a handgun. A lawsuit claims the city of Whitehall auxiliary police officer and Walmart is liable for the death of a man. This was something that occurred during a shoplifting in Ohio. Now a lawsuit says that 43-year-old Alexander Menhet went to Walmart to shop for a space heater when he was accused by an auxiliary police officer working security special detail of shoplifting. They got into a fight and the man died. One final note, TSA said last week they stopped 5,028 firearms from going through the checkpoints so far this year, and the busiest part of the year is coming up right now. Between now and the end of December, more guns will be recovered. Oh yes, one other story that really makes security continue to look bad. A Detroit factory worker was killed by a security guard during an argument over a food delivery. The man working late night at a Detroit factory called an outside food business to deliver some food to him. When the food delivery person came, the security officer said he could not bring it through the gate. No food from the outside was allowed. Then the employee called another person who came, and it got into a big fiasco. Nonetheless, the armed security officer used lethal force, killing the person, and unfortunately that security officer has now been charged with murder. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to be talking about how different clients change positions each year as to the most dangerous location. You're listening to the voice of the frontline protector, the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Distracted driving is dangerous, but some people just can't seem to help themselves. There's the steering wheel propper, the sneak-a-peeker, the fast roller, the nightlighter. And it's not long until they become the fender benderer, the got-a-ticketer, the veering off the road, the driver who kills someone. Enough with the phones already. Just put them down.
If the water is flowing at the low water crossing, turn around, turn around. Don't risk your life, don't do it. You might not make it through it. Turn around, turn around. Might take a little time, but heed the warning sign to turn around, turn around, turn around, and don't drown.
Every year, at least once a year, we rank the most dangerous locations to provide private security. And every year, the majority of those categories of businesses fall onto the list. And we work with a number of organizations. Of course, we also receive thousands of news reports every day, and we also do our own research online to see where the most injuries, assaults, and murders of security officers are reported. Collecting the data and compiling a list of the most dangerous locations is very important. It's one of those things that I think that Private Officer International does that is extremely important, not only to the security companies themselves, but to the individual security officers. I say that because many times we take contracts or we send out security staff to locations that they're not familiar with. They don't know the area. They don't know if it's a good area, a bad area, violent. They don't know if there's been criminal activity on the property, shootings, murder. They don't know unless they're from that neighborhood. So I think that as one of the services that we provide, and we do provide so many, that this is one of those things that we do on an annual basis that's extremely important. Now, we looked at the statistics both from the Hayes International and other organizations for the past year, but we also went back and looked at our own statistical data for the last 18 months, starting with January of 2023 through June, beginning of July of 2024, 18 months. And we have been able to categorically compile a list of the most violent, the most frequent attacks and assaults, and it's not probably going to be the places you think. So let's go with them. 6 top high-risk security clients. And we'll start with number 6. Number 6 is what we call street patrol, where we have roving patrols, and there's a lot more today than there was just 5 or 10 years ago. A lot more, because more communities are hiring patrols on bike or in patrol cars or on foot. And they're patrolling business zones, communities, entertainment districts, large complexes. And so street patrol is something that is done by security companies and private police officers regularly now. And it's one of those hot button type services that these companies are providing, because it really is taking over where law enforcement used to patrol. So street patrolling, whether on foot, in a vehicle, on a bicycle, very dangerous. You're contacting people that might be trespassing, loitering, drinking, doing drugs, homeless people. You don't know if they're armed. You don't know if they're going to be violent, if they are violent, if they're intoxicated, if they're going to attack you, or maybe even kill you. Many of the events where security officers are assaulted or killed in recent years all start out with them making having an interaction with a person to find out, what are they doing there? What are they up to? Do they live there? Who are they? Why are they there? Asking simple questions just like police officers do. And from that, many times the contact turns confrontational and even violent, and the security personnel and private police are injured and sometimes killed. Number 5, and I could go through a lot more detail, but I just want to give you a quick overview of these 6 high-risk security clients. Number 5, marijuana businesses. Now we know, year after year, security officers are injured and killed, just like the one in California within the last less than 2 weeks ago at a dispensary. Security officers are injured and killed at grow operations, dispensaries, during the from point A to point B transportation of it. They're killed at both the legal and the illegal black market business. It doesn't matter if it's a high-end production business, a high-end grow business. You know, you got many former actors and even wealthy people that have gotten into the marijuana business in the last 20 years, and they have a lot of sophisticated security equipment. They're very cautious. They do all the right things, but they still get robbed. Security officers are still injured or killed, and it just happens. And more states are allowing marijuana. In fact, I just did a research project for a news story that I wrote for one of my other businesses, and I was quite surprised. There's only 5 states that don't have any form of marijuana use. Everything else has either medical or consumer use combination, or has made it legal to grow your own a certain quantity. And the marijuana business is big booming. It's big for the states. They're collecting a lot of tax revenue, and that's why it's gotten so far out of hand, just like alcohol in years past. But marijuana businesses, whether it's a dispensary, a grow farm, a transportation, or maybe just taking the money someplace, because banks in most areas, in all areas that I know of actually, won't take it because it's against the law. Number 4, adult arcades, casinos, and gambling houses. Legal and not legal. Many casinos across the country are legal. Many well-known resorts have casinos in them. Usually, it's governed by the government. It's on tribal land. It meets the standards. And the illegal casinos, or what they call adult arcades in many states, are legal as long as they don't pay out any cash. But they do pay out cash, and that's where the problem comes in. But again, we just had a security officer murdered in Jacksonville, Florida, at least 5 to 10 times a year, and sometimes more. And that doesn't count the times they're robbed, or shot at, or face armed personnel, or assaulted. And again, these things have really gotten out of control. And they say, especially during COVID, nobody was really too involved in enforcement of the law. In most places, and I'm telling you from experience, they only enforce major felonies and major crimes and crimes where they had to make an arrest. But these areas are very dangerous to the security personnel. Number 3, and again, all of these so far have been on the list before, but in different locations. Maybe they were number 1, maybe they were number 8. Today I'm only doing the top 6, but we normally do a top 10. Number 3 is still residential, including motels and hotels, very violent, especially apartments. Again, there are security companies who do low-income apartment complexes, some who do only high-end, like gated communities and condominiums, HOAs, but you still have problems there. You respond to disturbances, car burglaries. One of the locations nearby to our contract recently upscale, very upscale, with a golf course and all of that good stuff, a restaurant. They had a bunch of vehicles broken into. Police did catch them that night, and it doesn't matter where the residence is, if it's gated or not gated, high end or low end, there's always going to be problems. Number 2 on the list is retail. We see more and more takeover retail robberies. Convenience stores, high-end stores, department stores, big box stores, it continues to happen. It has slowed down a little bit, but organized retail crime is a hot button with law enforcement. In California, the state where you would think that they would just ignore it, now has special organized retail crime teams working with loss prevention. A number of other states have been doing this for years, but California has also jumped on board. The California CHP is one of the leading agencies statewide for the organized retail crime investigations and arrests. Obviously, they have statewide authority, so that comes into play as well. But organized retail crime, shoplifting, is way, way beyond what anyone could think. It exploded probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's been really since COVID, it's just been everywhere. Small town, big city, doesn't matter. And security officers are injured, they've been pepper sprayed, they've been shot, they've been stabbed, you name it, it's happened to them, and it will continue to happen until these stores hire the right number of security staff, armed, trained, prepared. And at the top of the list right now, the number 1 most high-risk security client nationwide, hands down, are nightclubs or any place that serves liquor, alcohol, has dance parties throughout the country. Nightclubs are not what we would think of as being a nightclub. Some nightclubs are set up just for that night in a warehouse or a store. Recently in North Carolina, there was a teen party, and it turned out to be like a rave, and all kinds of drugs were given, and it became very violent. Security officers were injured, shots were fired. In a small town in Alabama during the summer, someone rented out a like a VFW type facility, and they had a big party in there, and it turned violent with shots fired, and people were injured. Across the country, nightclubs, or any place that serves alcohol, gentlemen's clubs, as they call them, strip clubs, all those type of venues are highly dangerous. And let me give you a little secret, and if you own a security company, you already know many, and I just had this conversation with an insurance company on Friday, many insurance companies will no longer insure any type of security company that has a nightclub. Doesn't matter what kind of club, what, you know, if it's a high scale, Richie Rich, it doesn't matter. They're not going to insure the security company because they are dangerous and definitely in the high end risk factor in the risk pool, and therefore they're not being insured. In fact, I will not have my company do any nightclubs or any place where a lot of alcohol is served. A friend of mine who owns a security company in Virginia does do nightclubs, and he pays that premium every year. My premium for liability insurance has gone up twice, not only with the security company but also with our school, and we will continue seeing that, I'm sure, for the unforeseen future. It is very dangerous. So there you have it. The top 6 most high-risk security clients. Nightclubs, number 1. Retail. That could be a convenience store, a big box store, a specialty store, sporting goods store, convenience, anything that has any product where people can steal. Residential communities, including motels, hotels, long-term communities, you know, extended stay type hotels, places where people live. Adult arcades and casinos, marijuana businesses, and street patrol, foot, mobile, or bike patrol. And yes, in some cases they even have boat patrol and horse patrol. So there you have it. Dangerous, dangerous time to have a security company. Think before you sign on the bottom line of that contract, because it may be too dangerous, or it may be something that your insurance company is not willing to hold that risk, and they're going to cancel your insurance. That's going to do it for this week's Private Officer Beat Radio. Thanks for being with us. Y'all stay safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio.